Right now, your feet are warm. There's a blanket somewhere, a heater humming, maybe a phone charging beside your pillow. You checked the weather today without even meaning to. A little icon told you it might snow and you shrugged. It didn't matter. It never matters. 40,000 years ago, that same little warning was the difference between waking up and not. Because the first storm of winter didn't announce itself with an icon. It came as a wall of blue-gray moving across the horizon, and you had hours, not days, hours, before it hit. And when it hit, four things came for you at once. The cold that shuts a human body down from the inside, the shelter you didn't have and couldn't build fast enough, a fire that refused to catch, and a hunger that made every wrong decision your last. They survived it. People with no walls, no forecast, no second chances survived the night the storm arrived. Here's what nobody mentions about how. So the wall hits. The temperature drops past minus 45. And here's the part that should scare you. Your body was never built for this. You are biologically a tropical machine. Your ancestors were shaped by African heat, and every system in you is tuned to shed warmth, not hoard it. Which means the moment that storm arrives, you're not fighting weather. You're fighting your own design. But the cold has a specific flaw in how it kills you, and it's not the number on a thermometer. It's speed. Here's the catch nobody expects. Death from cold doesn't come from the outside in. It comes from your core giving up. Your body has one non-negotiable rule. Keep the heart, the lungs, the brain at 98.6. So when the storm pulls heat out of your skin faster than your blood can replace it, your body makes a brutal trade. It slams the doors on your hands and feet. It abandons your fingers to save your chest. That's why the first thing to go isn't your strength. It's your judgment. Drop your core temperature just a few degrees and the part of your brain that makes decisions goes foggy first. Hunters found frozen have been discovered half undressed because in the final stage the dying brain feels a phantom flush of heat and tells you to take your clothes off. The cold doesn't just kill you, it convinces you to help. Sit with that for a moment. Minus 45 degrees and your own mind turning against you. So the cold gives you a window measured in hours before your thinking dissolves, which means everything now depends on one race you have to win before dark. But the thing you need to survive isn't a fire yet, and it isn't food. It's four walls that don't exist. You have maybe 2 hours of clear thought left and no house. So here's the real question. Where does a human with no lumber, no tools, and a storm bearing down actually hide? Here's the twist nobody expects. On the open steppe, there were no trees, no caves for miles. The one thing the landscape gave you in abundance was the thing you were trying not to become. The dead. At a site called Mezhyrich in modern Ukraine, archaeologists found shelters built from the bones of mammoths, dozens of them per structure, jawbones stacked in interlocking patterns, tusks arched into doorways. That took planning and time you didn't have during a first storm. But there was a faster, darker version of the same idea, and the picture on your screen is exactly it. You find a mammoth carcass, fresh if you're lucky, and you open it. A large animal's body holds heat for hours after death, and its ribcage is already a frame. Curved beams of bone arching over a hollow you can crawl inside. You gut it, you climb in, and the storm breaks against a wall of frozen flesh and rib, while you press against tissue that hasn't gone cold yet. Two of you, shoulder to shoulder, breathing fog into a space that still remembers being alive. That is its dying warmth, and for a few hours it's the only warmth on Earth that will have you. It sounds like horror. To them it was engineering. The prehistoric world didn't care about dignity, only about who was breathing at dawn. But a body cools. That borrowed heat drains hour by hour, and the storm outside isn't slowing. So now you're sheltered, but the warmth you stole is already dying in your hands, and the only thing that can replace it is the one thing that refuses to work when you need it most. So you reach for fire. Obvious. Except here's the part rarely mentioned. Fire's the hardest thing to make at the exact moment you need it more than air. Think about what a storm does to a spark. The wood around you is soaked. Your kindling is damp. The wind claws through every gap in that ribcage and steals the flame before it can breathe. And your hands? Remember your hands? The cold already took them. You're trying to perform delicate, precise work with fingers you can barely feel. But this is where these people stop looking primitive and start looking like specialists. Inside that mammoth shelter, they weren't burning wood. On a treeless steppe, there often wasn't any. At sites like Mezhyrich, hearths were fed with bone, mammoth-bone, which burns hot and slow once you get it going, and marrow fat that catches like a candle. They carried fire-making kits, dried fungus, tinder harvested in dry months, and kept sealed against exactly this night. They didn't find fire in the storm. They arrived carrying the storm's answer with them. That's the shift. Fire wasn't a lucky spark. It was an insurance policy packed in advance because they knew the first storm was coming even when the sky was clear. And it worked. A small flame in a bone hearth, throwing orange light up onto wet ribs, two faces finally warm. So you've beaten 3 of winter's death sentences. The cold that unravels your mind, the shelter you tore from a corpse, the fire you carried in your pocket. But there's a fourth, and it's the quiet one. It doesn't freeze you, and it doesn't burn out. It waits inside your own supplies, and one wrong choice made weeks ago is about to decide whether you see spring. Here's the uncomfortable question underneath all of this. You survived the night. So why did so many people who survived the first storm still die before winter ended? Because the storm was never really about that one night. It was a test of a decision you made long before the sky turned. The first storm is the gun going off in a race that lasts 4 months. And the food you're eating tonight is the only food there is until the ground thaws. Now, here's the twist nobody expects about ancient hunger. The killer wasn't running out. It was running out too soon because you couldn't count. A group that ate well those first freezing nights, warm, fed, morale high, was a group that starved in February. Every mouthful had to be rationed against a spring you couldn't see and couldn't predict. Eat like a survivor tonight and you're a corpse in 8 weeks. And it went deeper than portions. Meat stored in the cold keeps, but fat is what actually keeps you alive. It's the fuel your body burns to make its own heat. Groups that ate only lean meat through a long winter could eat and still waste away, starving on a full stomach. So the real skill wasn't hunting. It was arithmetic. Knowing your stores, dividing them across months, protecting the fat like it was warmth itself, because it was. That's the death sentence no coat and no fire could fix. The cold gives you a night to solve. Hunger gives you a whole winter, and it kills the people who thought the hard part was already over. So look at what surviving that first storm actually took. The cold that switched off your mind before it switched off your heart. You beat it by understanding that your own body was the trap. The shelter, you beat it by climbing inside a dead giant and borrowing its dying warmth. The fire, you beat it by carrying the answer in your pocket months before the clouds came. And the hunger, you beat it not with strength, but with the discipline to stay hungry tonight so you'd still be alive in spring. 4 death sentences, 1 storm, and people with none of what you have walked out the other side. You checked the weather today and shrugged. A little icon told you it might snow, and it didn't matter because it never matters. Your walls hold, your heater hums, your food waits behind a door that stays cold on its own. That shrug is the most expensive luxury your ancestors never had. And the next time that little warning glows on your screen and you feel absolutely nothing, you might finally understand what a miracle that nothing really is. If watching people survive on borrowed heat from a dead mammoth made your warm room feel a little less ordinary, subscribe and hit the bell. Think of it as your own insurance policy, packed in advance so the next storm of forgotten history never catches you cold. But before you go, be honest with me. If it came down to freezing outside or crawling inside a mammoth carcass to make it to morning, would you actually climb in? Tell me in the comments. I already know which of you are lying.